So,
Absolutely.
well, it's great to meet you. I want to begin our conversation before we get into your work as an education expert by asking you this. And this is
Sure.
something that was definitely a part of the tapestry of education. 4 years ago, 4.5 years ago, we were trying to figure out how we were going to get out of this pandemic. How did you survive that time period? And how did it ultimately change the way that you approach things now?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I would say before the pandemic, everything that we did was in person, not just the tutoring, but even the way we ran our office was a little more old-fashioned. It was a lot of physical files, physical reports. So I would say several things happened pretty quickly when the pandemic started. One was that we really very quickly pivoted to virtual tutoring, virtual resources, virtual technology, so that we could continue providing these services to students. And then I would say just more from more of a back end perspective, we really went totally digital in terms of our physical office, even though you see one file behind me. We have almost no more files that we use except certain cases, but everything's digital. But in terms of the work that we do, we were able to develop pretty quickly a visual platform for helping students. And that's something we continue to offer. We now do in person, but we also have that virtual offer, which is a great way to provide the services that we do to kids, not just in our local area, but nationally and actually worldwide now. So that's been exciting.
So let's get to the heart and soul of exactly what you do on a daily basis. And I'm going to do this by putting you in front of a bunch of third graders. It's
Sure.
career day, and one of the kids is curious and says, "Hey, what do you do for a living?" How do you
Sure.
answer them?
The short answer is I run a one-on-one tutoring business. The deeper answer is we provide one-on-one tutoring to students who have special education needs, including students with learning disabilities, ADHD, autism, speech and language challenges. And we use all research-based multisensory techniques that are catered to the individual needs of each student.
And I understand that very well. My 19-year-old is on the spectrum, so I've been in the special ed world for quite a while. So I'm always astonished at it's so good. There's so many modern technological advances that are helping all of these kids be able to communicate with the outer world.
Yes, absolutely. I think there's been a lot of great advancements in that respect.
So let's get to the heart and soul of first and foremost, when you were in the third grade, what did you want to be? What was your dream for your life?
Oh gosh, well, I actually wanted to be a doctor when I was younger. My dad he doesn't practice anymore, but was a practicing doctor. My brother's a doctor, and that was kind of like what I knew, what I thought I wanted to do. And I kind of started on that path when I was in college, and then I ended up pivoting and fell in love with education, and I haven't looked back ever since.
So take me back to your beginnings, where you were born and raised, and how these seeds of getting into education and helping students and helping people get to a better place, how did all this take hold and evolve into who you are today?
Sure. So I grew up in Florida, and in addition to my father being a doctor, my mother started and ran a school for students with learning disabilities. So I really spent much of my childhood working at her school, being trained in different methods. Thought I wanted to carve my own path and really not do that at the time. So I went to Brown University. I started in a different direction, and then eventually realized my calling was education. I loved how rewarding it was, how fulfilling it was. And eventually I ended up getting my master's in special education and then my doctorate in general education.
So, not to stray too far away from this pandemic, but I noticed my day job is an IT technician for a school district here in Kansas City. And
Okay.
I noticed with a lot of these kids, and my wife's a teacher, she was fifth grade at the time. A lot of these kids were the ones that took the brunt end of all of this. I mean, their social outlets, their emotional outlets were all cut off. How long do you think that's going to take for them to kind of recover from that time, or is it never going to be something that will be abdicated?
That's a great question. I don't know that I know the real answer to that. I don't know that anyone does. I
Yeah.
think part of it depends on, first of all, were they neurotypical or do they have specialized needs? I think that affect those kids differently, the ones who have more specialized learning needs. What grade were they in? I think there are certain grades that were affected more than others. And then I think it depends on the individual student. I think some kids are more resilient, we're able to bounce back pretty quickly, and others have these real kind of long lasting issues that are stemming from the pandemic. So I think there's so many variables, and I think it's really just with time that we'll be able to reflect back and see what the long-term effects are. But I really do think it varies on a kind of student by student basis.
Yeah. Well, and I think the special needs community probably got hit probably harder, I think, just because there is so much that they need as far as being in a physical proximity with an educator and having all of the other kids and all of that. It seems to me that there was something special about that group that they went through.
Absolutely. Completely agree.
So let me ask you this. Who's been kind of a hero? Who's been kind of a role model for the work that you've done?
Say probably well, two people. One is my mother, who I'm still very close with, even though she doesn't run her school anymore. She's now since started a tutoring program down in Florida. So I kind of learned a lot from her, and then she learned a lot from me and does something similar to what I do now. So it kind of comes full circle. I also had a mentor who, unfortunately, she's passed away, but her name was Diana King. She was the founder of the Kildonan School in upstate New York, and she really was like the number one guru in dyslexia. And she was my mentor for a long time. She taught me so much. And she's not with us anymore, but she really made her mark in the world of dyslexia.
So if you could meet one person alive on the planet right now that you find inspirational and just to see how they operate, who would it be? Who would you love to meet and be around?
Say someone who's really inspirational to me is a woman named Sally Shaywitz, who's a researcher at Yale University, and she really kind of started the whole research into the brain of what makes someone neurotypical versus neurodiverse. Continues to run this lab at Yale University, and I find her to be really just so fascinating. And I think the work she does is amazing.
So, what is your motivation every day to do the work that you do? You have to give a lot of yourself to help, but you also have to evolve as a human. What is that for you every day?
Yeah, I mean, I really love what I do. I think every day is different. I love hearing success stories of our students who struggled so much in school and now feel confident, happy, thriving in school. It's kind of what keeps me going every day is watch so.
What's been one of your best success stories or one of your early success stories where you knew this was your calling, this was the job that you needed to have?
Sure. So there was one back in the day, I used to tutor myself, and there was one boy I worked with who was in kindergarten at the time, had severe ADHD, severe dyslexia, bounced off walls. And initially, I didn't think I could help this child, but really, eventually, over time and with the right support, the right engagement, he learned to read, he learned to write. And actually, not that long ago, his mother happened to have reached out to me and said that not only did he get through school, but he went through college, he went through engineering school, and he's now working as an engineer. So it does date me a little bit, but it's just was an amazing success story. This boy who no one thought had any hope in him and now is working as an engineer. So it was really a remarkable story.
That's wonderful. So let's go back to youth here a little bit. Let's say you have a dream tonight. You run into a 18-year-old version of you and you could give that young version of you a piece of advice. Based on the life you've lived, the wisdom you've gained along the way, what advice would you impart on that young version of you?
Say, be open to opportunities. Never feel like you have it all figured out because you just never know what direction something can take you in. And even if something feels a little uncomfortable at first, it's important to kind of jump into it and see where it goes because my life has had several pivots and it's all worked out really well for me. And I think if I wasn't open to new opportunities and scary opportunities, I probably wouldn't be where I am now.
So what was the first book for you growing up that you loved that either made you want to read more or just opened up a new world for you?
There's so many books that one book that sticks out to me is Marjorie Morningstar was a book that I loved and I read several times as a kid. But I used to read a lot when I was young. I used to read several series. I would just get, nose deep in books and I'd love to finish series. So I used to that, but that's one book that I would say jumps out to me.
So of everything that you've done up to this point in your life and accomplished, what are you the proudest of?
Well, I'm really proud that I've been able to build a successful tutoring program to help thousands of kids at this point to really thrive. I think that's something that's so meaningful for me and something that I hope to continue doing for many, many more years.
So what's the best advice you have ever gotten?
The best advice I've ever gotten is, it's probably cliche, but, don't let failure stop you. It's, in the moment, sometimes when something doesn't go well, it's so disheartening and you never want to do it again. But it's really, get up and keep going. I remember when I was a kid, I was probably an early teenager and I had a bad bike accident. And I had all these scratches on my face. And my parents said, "You're getting on that bike again tomorrow because I don't want you to be afraid of biking again." And I went on a bike, and sure enough, I continued to bike. And so it was those little moments of just not letting failure or letting troubles bring you down, but just to learn from it and keep going.
So everyone has a perception of you in different capacities, family, friends, all of your clients, everyone that you service, but you ultimately run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
Good question. I would say I like to think of myself as a good listener, both professionally, socially, personally. I really try to listen fully and be present. I think that's something that's really important, that it's so easy to get distracted in life. So I would say I'm a really good listener. I try to be thoughtful and think about answers and really be strategic in what I do and not just be impulsive. So I think really listening and being thoughtful and strategic in what I do are probably some themes about myself.
So from, kind of a personal and even an educational standpoint, you get a lot of younger kids. Are you hopeful for the future for where we're going with them having to live through this pandemic period and going into this post-pandemic area and everything that's going on? Are you hopeful of not only their development, but their educational journey?
I think that we're going to be encountering a lot of things that we've never encountered before, from TikTok to AI to just advances of tech in technology. And I think that we're going to have to just evolve with it and hopefully and really be on top of our kids and helping them through these changes, because I think there's going to be a lot of evolutions pretty quickly. I am hopeful, but I think as long as we're on top of it, we're guiding them, we're learning with them, I am hopeful for the future.
So let's say we get off this call, time machine pulls up, you can go anywhere in the history of time and see one moment with your own eyes. Where would you go?
One moment at probably the turn of the century, I think would be really interesting just to see how everything changed at that point.
Absolutely. So if anyone wants to reach out, learn more about what you're doing, hire you, any of the good business, where's the best place to go?
Best place is our website, which is eblcoaching.com. E like Edward, B like boy, L like Larry. There's lots of articles I've written, different podcasts I've been on, a lot of information about what we do, our tutoring program. So I would say that's the best place. And then we also have channels under EBL Coaching on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok.
Excellent. Emily, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for your story. Best of luck with everything.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you. Take care.